This should be a time of great happiness for America. We've won the Cold War. We stand supreme as the world's strongest democracy and economy. No country has been as powerful as America for 2,000 years. Yet incredibly, Americans are not happy. We're worried. And whether we look at the taxes our families must pay, the debt we're leaving our children, rising illegitimacy and crime, we know if our leaders don't keep their word and change the direction our government is taking us, our families will never know America as great as it once was, as great as it could be. There comes a time when a great nation must face up to its problems or be overwhelmed by them. Phil Gramm believes this is just such a moment for America.
Trap ready? Pull. He's got the makings of a better shooter than his old man. Look down, pounce, the bird comes up past us. Sure, Marshall. Meet this shoe. How are you? Nice to see you, brother. Big day.
He believes that there are many, many decisions being made by government that need to be made by the families. He stands up for what he believes in. Keeps his word.
I admire him, I respect him. What he says he's going to do, he does.
This is a man who, when he says he's going to do something, does it.
You tell him to stand back for us.
Okay, you got it.
Voters deserve a candidate who will stand by what he promised them.
He's the only candidate for president who is going to live up to the promise to balance the budget.
I've had a pretty good view of what it takes to run for president. It takes nerves of steel, and you have them. It takes focus and discipline, and you have them. It takes vision and a sound, rock-solid belief in philosophy, and you have that. It takes a supportive family and a loving wife, and you have that. It takes looks and charisma. You don't have that. But let me tell y'all something. The people of Texas know this, and the people of America are fixing to learn it. Phil Gramm stands on principle.
I am fond of saying that no is often the right answer in Washington, D.C. And there is one no that I am very proud of. At the darkest moment in the health care debate, when Republican pollsters were telling us it is political suicide to take on the Clinton health care bill head on, the best we're going to be able to do is make marginal changes, but for God's sakes, don't go out and say you're absolutely against it. When Bob Dole had joined John Chafee in a big government compromise that would have taxed your private health insurance benefits, that would have set up a national health board, that would have set up health care purchasing cooperatives, that would have moved the government toward taking over the health care system, I stood up and said, the Clinton health care bill is going to pass over my cold, dead political body. And may I just make note of the fact that my political body is alive and well and with you in Dallas. The Clinton health care bill is deader than Elvis. And who knows? Elvis fans may be right. He may be back. But the Clinton health care bill will never be back. There's a strength in knowing who you are and what you believe and what you want to do. And I know who I am, and I know what I believe in. And when I stand up for it, and it is not popular at the moment, I'm not deterred by that.
In 1969, the future Mrs. Phil Gramm, Wendy Lee, had one thing on her mind: a teaching career at Texas A&M University. She had yet to meet a determined young economics professor named Phil Gramm.
Wendy had turned me down twice in a proposal of matrimony. And so I took her to San Antonio. We were eating on the Riverwalk, and I got down on one knee and said, "If you'll marry me, I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make you happy." And 25 years later, I'm still working at it. And I think the lesson of it is, number one, I don't always make a great first impression. Number two, I wear well. And three, I know a good thing when I see one. Marshall is starting graduate school at Texas A&M to get his PhD in economics. Given that his mama's an economist and given that I'm an economist, I don't think anybody ought to be surprised about that. Jeff is a junior at the University of Chicago. We've tried to help them develop their sense of self-reliance. We tried to let them know that you start out competing with other people in life, but the ultimate competition is against yourself. To be better than you think you can be. To do more than you really think you're capable of doing.
Phil Gramm earned a PhD in economics from the University of Georgia and taught economics at Texas A&M University. In 1978, Phil ran for Congress as a Democrat, determined to cut government spending so families could keep more of what they earned. And what Phil Gramm said he'd do, he did. Though Phil was a Democrat, he defied his party bosses in Congress and co-sponsored Ronald Reagan's landmark effort to reduce the size and power of government.
Phil Gramm wrote the federal budget that cut taxes, rebuilt our national defense, and created 21 million new jobs.
But House Speaker Tip O'Neill threw Phil off the Budget Committee, forcing Phil Gramm to make a crucial decision.
After a long and prayerful deliberation, I have concluded that the only honorable course of action is to resign my seat in Congress and to seek re-election as a Republican.
The people of Texas overwhelmingly voted to re-elect Gramm to Congress. The young man from College Station was promoted to the U.S. Senate, working again to reduce big government's heavy burden on the American family.
I'm proud of my leadership in making the Reagan economic program the law of the land. I authored the Reagan budget in the House. That budget mandated the largest tax cut in American history. We cut domestic spending, we rebuilt defense, we won the Cold War, we tore down the Berlin Wall, we liberated Eastern Europe, we transformed the Soviet Union, we changed the world.
I think Phil's toughness comes from his background. He had a very humble background. His father was invalided when he was young and died when he was just a teenager.
I remember the day my father was buried. I remember when we got home from the funeral. My mother got us around the kitchen table and said, "Our lives are going to change. We're going to have to learn to live on less." My mother worked double shifts. My brother bought all the groceries, did all the cooking, wrote all the checks, signed all my report cards. I did the yard work and the housework and washed all the dishes. We changed, we grew closer, we grew stronger. Families and businesses in America have to make hard choices because they live in the real world. Our government has not lived in the real world for 40 years, and if I become president, that's going to change. I want you to know that if I become president, we're going to balance the federal budget. As president, I will make it my first priority to balance the federal budget, and I want you to understand that I'm serious about it. I will make it my first priority to balance the federal budget, and if I do not get the job done, I will not run for re-election.
Senator Phil Gramm of Texas, one of your opponents for the Republican nomination, has promised to balance the budget in his first term by the year 2000 and says if he doesn't, he will not run for re-election. Are you willing to make the same pledge?
I don't think it'd be possible. You know, I have a lot of respect for Phil Gramm. He knows a lot about, he's a professor of economics. But I don't believe the American people could stand a cut of that, not cut, but restraint and growth of that much.
And let me tell you how I'm going to do it. Some of you have heard me talk about the Dickey Flat test, but by the time this campaign for president is over, every person in America is going to know the Dickey Flat test. And here's how it works. I try to look at every government program and I try to think of some hard-working, honest-to-God, flesh-and-blood American. And I often think about a printer in my old congressional district from Mahia, Texas, named Dickey Flat. And I think about him because he's one of the hardest working, best people I know. His print shop is open till 6 or 7 o'clock every night. He's open till 5 o'clock on Saturday. And whether you see him at the PTA or the Boy Scouts or the Presbyterian Church, try as he may, he never quite gets that blue ink off the end of his fingers. And let me tell you what I'm going to do as president. I'm going to look at every federal program and I'm going to think about the millions of people like Dickey Flat in this country who get their hands dirty working for a living. And I'm going to ask a simple question. Are the benefits we're getting by spending money on this program worth taking the money away from Dickey Flat and the millions of people like him to pay for it? And let me tell you the answer to that question. The answer to that question is generally no. And when the answer is no, I will say no. The debate is not about how much money is going to be spent on our children. The debate is not about how much money is going to be spent on housing and nutrition and education. The debate is about who is going to do that spending. Bill Clinton and the Democrats want the government to do the spending. We want the family to do the spending.
Phil Gramm says that as big government has become the dominant influence in our lives, as we've all turned to Washington to take care of us, to solve all our problems, we've turned away from self-reliance, from our families and our faith. We're rendering unto Caesar what does not belong to Caesar. Phil Gramm says our reliance on big government has weakened us, corrupted our values, and destroyed our virtues, and brought us close to moral collapse. Washington can't keep punishing people who work with higher taxes and rewarding people who don't work with more welfare. Washington can't keep paying poor parents not to marry and handing out welfare checks for illegitimacy.
I want to ask able-bodied men and women riding in the wagon on welfare to get out of the wagon and help the rest of us pull. I want to stop giving people more and more money to have more and more children on welfare. And let me tell you why I want to change these things. Because welfare hurts the very people it's supposed to be helping. It has denied millions of our fellow citizens access to the American dream. And if we really love them, we've got to work to help them get it back.
If we want to reverse America's moral decline, Phil Gramm says we're going to have to change Washington and make it smaller, not because we hate government, but because government can't replace family, faith, and freedom.
We have a right to dream great dreams because we're Americans. And if American history proves anything, it proves that what we can dream, we can do. Our founders dreamed that we could start the world over again, and they did it in America. With God's help, we can make our dream, the American dream, a reality now and forever.